Hello, everybody. I hope you had a good night. And here we are for the second day of our Clear Awareness Retreat. We got online. Good. Thank you. And we'll start, as always, with our opening prayers. Before I do that, I want to make a very brief announcement. We have invited you to send in questions or comments that you would like to have me be aware of and perhaps to read aloud and respond to. So if you could send those in by 11 a.m. today, because it ends today, Arizona time, to questions@garchen.net. That's questions@garchen, GARCHEN.net. And there's a special section of the day put aside for responding to comments and questions. We'll see how many we receive. Often we can't do all of them, but I always keep them. And I do respond in some way, sometimes mind to mind, and sometimes perhaps if you give me your contact information, if it's something that makes sense for me in terms of time and my understandings, sometimes I can get back in that way. So let's make it as easy as possible to communicate what concerns us and what will be of help to everybody. Thanks. So let's do our opening prayers. The yellow book, if you have it, we'll start with page 1. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. Page 2, for that purpose, until I attain Buddhahood, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Until death, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. From today until this time tomorrow, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Page 3, generating bodhicitta. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path. Page 5, the Four Immeasurables. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. An infinite array of worlds, each with 4 continents, and the wealth of infinite oceans of realms, if I bring them all to mind and offer them without exception, please hold with compassion all the beings they contain. My body, enjoyments, and whatever I own, my aggregates, elements, and sense sources, my aspirations now and in times to come, as well as everything I grasp as mine, by offering them all, may I be blessed with the end of self-grasping. Completely liberated from the bounds of real and unreal, transcending the names and concepts of arising, cessation, and abiding, coming and going, affirmation and denial, the supreme mandala is the natural state. By offering it, may I be blessed to attain the state of Buddhahood. Om Guru Deva Dakini Ratna Mandala Pratitha Soha. Namo to the Guru, the utter purity of all appearance and existence. I offer all appearance and existence, arisen as the primordial ground. I supplicate you, may the 3 realms be completely liberated. Please grant blessings to empty samsara from its depths. Lord, with 5 omniscient wisdoms, crown ornament, kind one with loving nature, precious protector of beings, heart of all Buddhas, inexpressible by words or thought, I supplicate you from the core of my mind. Bless me from within the state of Dharmata. Bless me to realize this mind primordially pure and unborn as the unfathomable Dharmakaya. Please turn the wheel of the Dharma according to the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings. And let's recite together the 37 Bodhisattva practices. And those who are present in the room at this time, we can recite it all together. Namo Lokeshvaraya. While seeing that all phenomena neither come nor go, you strive solely for the sake of all beings. Supreme Guru and Protector Chenrezig, at all times I respectfully pay homage to you with my body, speech, and mind. The perfect Buddha, source of all benefit and happiness, arise from having accomplished the true Dharma. Since that depends on knowing the practices, I shall explain the way of Bodhisattvas. Having now gained this great ship of freedom and fortune so difficult to find, in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of cyclic existence, listen, reflect, and meditate day and night without distraction. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Attachment to loved ones churns like water, hatred for enemies rages like fire. In the darkness of ignorance, one forgets what to adopt and what to avoid. Abandon your homeland. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When negative places are abandoned, disturbing emotions will gradually decline. Without distractions, attention to virtue naturally grows. When the mind becomes clear, certainty in the Dharma arises. Live alone in seclusion. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Family and longtime companions will part from each other. Possessions gained with effort will be left behind. Consciousness, a guest, will leave the guest house of the body. Let go of all worldly concerns. This is the way of a bodhisattva. In bad company, the 3 poisons grow stronger. The activities of learning, reflecting, and meditating decline, and love and compassion are lost. Give up such companions. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When one follows a true spiritual friend, faults will dissolve and good qualities will grow like the waxing moon. Consider this friend more dear than your own body. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Who can worldly gods, themselves imprisoned in samsara, protect? Therefore seek refuge in the 3 jewels, the undeceiving source of refuge. This is the way of a bodhisattva. The Buddha taught that all the unbearable suffering of the lower realms is caused by wrongdoing. Therefore never act wrongfully, even at the cost of your life. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Like a dewdrop on a blade of grass, the happiness of the 3 worlds vanishes in but an instant. Strive for the supreme state of never-changing liberation. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When mothers who've loved you since beginningless time are suffering, what good is your own happiness? Therefore give rise to bodhicitta in order to liberate infinite sentient beings. This is the way of a bodhisattva. All suffering without exception comes from seeking for your own happiness. The perfect Buddhas are born from the altruistic mind. Therefore, truly exchange your own happiness for the suffering of others. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone driven by great desire steals all your wealth or lets others steal it, Dedicate to them your body, possessions, and all virtues of the 3 times. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone cuts off your head when you haven't done anything wrong, take all their negative deeds upon yourself through the power of compassion. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if others slander you throughout 1 billion worlds, in return speak with a loving mind of their good qualities. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone exposes your hidden faults and insults you in front of others, view that person as a teacher and bow with respect. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone you've cared for as dearly as your own child regards you as an enemy, love that person even more as a mother would her ailing child. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even if someone of equal or lower status driven by pride treats you with disdain, respectfully place them on your crown as your teacher. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Though you may be impoverished, always disparaged, gripped by disease, and tormented by spirits, never lose courage, but take on the misdeeds and pains of all beings. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Though you may be famous and revered by many and are as rich as the wealth god himself, having seen that worldly fortune is without essence, do not be proud. This is the way of a bodhisattva. If the enemy, your own anger, is not tamed, subduing outer enemies will only make them increase. Therefore, subdue your own mind with the army of love and compassion. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Sensory pleasures are like salt water. The more you drink, the greater your thirst. Abandon at once all things that give rise to clinging attachment. This is the way of a bodhisattva. The way things appear is your own mind. Mind itself primordially transcends fabricated extremes. Knowing just this, do not create concepts of subject and object. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When you come across things that attract you, like beautiful rainbows in summertime, do not regard them as real and abandon clinging attachment. This is the way of a bodhisattva. All suffering is like the death of your child in a dream. How exhausting it is to hold illusory appearances as real. Therefore, when you meet with difficult circumstances, see them as illusory. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When even one's body must be given up when aspiring for enlightenment, what need is there to mention material things? Therefore, practice generosity without hope of reward or karmic results. This is the way of a bodhisattva. If you lack moral discipline, you cannot accomplish even your own purpose, so wanting to achieve the purpose of others is truly absurd. Therefore, protect your discipline without concern for worldly existence. This is the way of a bodhisattva. For bodhisattvas who desire a wealth of virtue, all harm is like a precious treasure. Therefore, without hostility, be patient with everyone. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Even hearers or solitary realizers who accomplish only their own purpose strive as if putting out a fire on their head. Seeing this, practice with diligence the source of good qualities for the sake of all beings. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Disturbing emotions are destroyed by insight, grounded in calm abiding. Knowing this, cultivate meditative concentration that purely transcends the 4 formless absorptions. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Without wisdom, the other 5 perfections alone are not enough to reach complete enlightenment. Thus, combined with skillful means, develop the wisdom that does not distinguish among the 3 spheres. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Unless you examine your own confused ideas, you might look like a practitioner but not be acting like one. Therefore, always examine yourself and abandon confusion. This is the way of a bodhisattva. If you're driven by disturbing emotions and talk about another bodhisattva's faults, it's actually to your own detriment. So don't mention the faults of those who've entered the great vehicle. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Concern for gain and respect causes conflict and a decline in the activities of learning, reflecting, and meditating. So abandon attachment to your circle of friends, relations, and benefactors. This is the way of a bodhisattva. Harsh words disturb others' minds and thus diminish the practice of a bodhisattva. Therefore, abandon harsh speech, which is unpleasant to others. This is the way of a bodhisattva. When disturbing emotions become habitual, it is difficult to reverse them with antidotes. Thus, the soldier of mindfulness wields antidotes as weapons and destroys disturbing emotions such as attachment the moment they start to arise. This is the way of a bodhisattva. In brief, wherever you are and whatever you are doing, always examine the state of your mind. Act to accomplish the purpose of others through constant mindfulness and awareness. This is the way of a bodhisattva. With the wisdom of threefold purity, dedicate all the virtue gained by having made such effort toward enlightenment. Dedicate it to clear away the suffering of infinite beings. This is the way of a bodhisattva. sometimes people wonder why we repeat these same prayers every time we gather. And why do we do the recitation of the 37 practices at the beginning of our teachings? It was told to me many years ago that in Tibetan, the word prayer is translated as munlam, which means mind path. And the cause of our suffering, self-grasping, gives rise to thought patterns and patterns of behavior that we repeat over and over and over again. And they acquire a heavy weight of predisposition, lifetime through lifetime. And just as it takes a very great effort to change the course of a great sailing ship, even by a tiny degree, so it takes effort and commitment and clear intention to create mind paths that are arising from, imbued with, and conducive to our minds really understanding the nature of reality, to seeking words of truth and wisdom and inspiration for behavior that accords with those words, and that begins the process that takes place over time of gradually melting the ice block mind that we have, that is melted by the warmth of limitless love and compassion, ultimate bodhicitta. This is a favorite teaching of Garchen Rinpoche, as I'm sure many of you know, the teaching of the ice block and the melting of it. So we repeat and repeat and repeat, and each time we are imbued slightly more deeply, sometimes abruptly more deeply, with words of truth and how to follow them. The other reason that we repeat these prayers over and over again is, particularly at the beginning of our sessions, is that really motivation is everything. The benefit or harm of an action of body, speech, or mind principally arises from the condition of the mind. That is the principal determinant of the benefit or the harm of our actions. So we establish at the outset of our coming together the highest, most beneficial mind intention that human beings, sentient beings, can generate, which is bodhicitta. And as we spoke of yesterday, Garchen Rinpoche has taught that without limitless love and compassion, it's not even possible to meditate. So we have that in mind, not as a castigation or a shaming of ourselves or a discouraging factor of, oh, I don't have limitless love and compassion yet, so I shouldn't even try to meditate. And as I mentioned yesterday, no, that's to take wrong the message in what he's saying. If it requires limitless love and compassion in order to be able to meditate and ultimately penetrate the obscurations to resting in the natural state, the truly ultimate wisdom state, then the point of the instruction is to generate limitless love and compassion, not to founder in hopelessness and despair. Generate every moment, in every circumstance, with body, speech, and mind, become a furnace of bodhicitta. We're in the midst of a pandemic. There will be others. Let us take upon ourselves the task of becoming pure contagions, pandemics of love and compassion, penetrating everywhere, irresistible, overwhelming, and completely enlightening. This is why we repeat our prayers daily and at the beginning of a teaching session and a session of practice. Thank you. I'm glad I had the opportunity to say that. It's very heartfelt. I had to learn that by learning how to practice patience when the prayers were being repeated, and I thought, why do we hear the same thing over and over again? Gradually I got it, because I need to hear it over and over again. There's tremendous tendency towards slippage in the mind of a sentient being. We need to hear truth over and over and over again. So, please listen carefully when you hear it, and then when you hear it the next time, you wake up inside in response rather than sort of thinking, okay, I said this last time and the time before. Okay. This is the voice of hard-won experience speaking. This morning I want to talk about the Bodhisattva's life path. And the teaching that I touched upon briefly yesterday of Guru Pamasambhava, Guru Rinpoche, Guru Pema, that in the bardos, not just the bardo between death and rebirth, but all the bardos of existence as well. The key instruction is to take everything, all appearance and experience, all appearance and existence, as the reflection of our own mind. So I want to touch on Bodhisattva intention and the life path, and then this teaching about, which is actually verse 22 in the Bodhisattva practices, the teaching that everything that we see is a mirror for our own mind. So I read to you yesterday something that I had written some years ago, and I'm going to read the whole piece that comes from. It's very short. Absolute and relative both are. We talked about that extensively yesterday, the union of the two truths. In this dreamlike life, we appear for a moment in a reality that we call relative, while our true nature is the absolute itself, unborn and undying, changeless, lucid, radiant, and empty. And here we touch again on the union of relative and absolute, that we are that union. We already are what we aspire to become. We are templates of truth to be laid bare by love. And here we begin to speak now about the actual work of the Bodhisattva and why the Bodhisattva does this work. The laying bare, okay, so we're templates of truth to be laid bare by love. So truth pre-exists all appearances and is their inherent nature. And we see that through the work of love, through generating limitless love, through increasing, always increasing our capacity and our commitment to love. And it's not just beings. So this is what I want to speak to here. The laying bare is the spiritual work, and love, inseparable from truth, is its ground, its path, and its fruit. To be what we already are, only two things are required of us: to love and to know. To love completely all beings and all phenomena, and to know directly the true nature of being. These two are not two. For the first, we cultivate bodhicitta, the great love. For the second, we cultivate the inward attention, clear awareness, to recognize and rest in the true nature. We tend to think of love as being from two. I love you, I love this, I love that. In other words, in a way that tends to arise from and increase our reliance upon the delusion of dualistic appearances. it is very challenging for us, or can be very challenging for us, when we're in circumstances that are very difficult, circumstances of suffering or great confusion, torment, fear, doubt, tremendous desire, overwhelming, or in world conditions that are very frightening and discouraging and tragic. It is very hard for us to even think of loving those conditions. It's almost as if it's an instruction that would be foreign to our understanding of how to think about relative reality and how to think about ourselves as spiritual practitioners. We're more focused on what we call sentient beings than we are on the circumstances and conditions in which sentient beings find themselves as conditions and circumstances that also call for us to love them completely. This also means to love your faults. I know the teachings sometimes sound as if they're saying something quite different from that our faults are our enemies. Well, love your enemies. A great teacher of many eons ago said, love your enemies. Not eons, centuries. We need to be completely filled with and overflowing with love and compassion, without object or consideration of appropriateness or desirability. We need to be a vessel full to overflowing so that we are ceaselessly overflowing, and that anything that appears to us in the mind, in the body, in the world around us, in our relationships, in the words we hear from others, in the circumstances that we see ourselves and others creating, in the tremendous suffering that comes from many circumstances, and the great ignorance that we see causing harm throughout the world, we need to hold that also in love. Pure, spontaneous, unadulterated, limitless love and compassion. Nothing changes because it is hated. It is not hard ice that produces change, that calls forth life. It is the warmth of the sunlight of the heart and mind, as Rinpoche calls it. It is love, that warmth that calls forth life. And it is the life of our purpose as bodhisattvas. Vast, profound, unconditional, unwavering, limitless, infinite love and compassion. This is not too much to ask of ourselves and of one another as practitioners. This is the whole point. This is the entire purpose of our enterprise in the Dharma. Not only is it the animating principle, it's the electricity that runs through that principle. It's the fuel, the fire for the Bodhisattva intention to grow. We pray every time we come together, we pray that where bodhicitta has arisen, let it not decline. Where it has not arisen, let it arise and ever grow higher and higher. It is love. Love infused with limitless compassion. That is bodhicitta. So this piece that I've just read to you, this is what I take as my instruction. These are instructions from me to myself and from me to any of my spiritual friends, meaning all sentient beings. These are our instructions. These are our walking papers. Take them and walk. And it will banish fear. These instructions are the essence. They will banish fear. When there is no self, when self has dissolved in love for all things and all beings, there's no fear because there's nothing to be harmed. And when there is no fear, there's no hatred. Think about that the next time you feel fear, and look directly at your own mind. As fear arises, watch what else is happening in your mind. We're going to talk about that in some depth in a bit. So, if I think of myself as a bodhisattva committed, as I do think, and imperfect like us all, and perfect like us all, then if I could just have this emblazoned somewhere on my heart or my third eye or someplace where, so if I encounter a mirror somewhere, immediately I see these instructions coming back to me. They're that important to how I've been learning in the years since these words came from my mind to paper. These are the guidelines, and the principle among them is to love everything. That only two things that are required of us as bodhisattvas on the path: to know the direct nature of reality directly, the true nature directly, and to love all beings and all things, all appearances, all phenomena. And then it says these two are not two. It means they come together. You can't have one without the other. This moment of insight in which you directly and completely realize the nature of mind, spontaneously, complete, unobjectified, unfixated, perfect, foaming, milky love pours forth. And when love is all there is, I want to burst into a Beatles song at that moment. When love is all there is within you, when you are taken over by love, and we all have moments for this. And I'm talking not about personal love coming from personality, I'm talking about universal love arising suddenly within, and one is taken by it momentarily. In that moment, you are aware of the nature of being, the essence of being, that it is open, empty, space-like in clarity, luminous, self-luminous, arising from within, and that its activity is of the nature of love. The entity is emptiness, the nature is clarity, and the activity is compassion, love, compassion. This is in our, on the webpage for this event. There's a place where you can download documents. This document that I've just read, absolute and relative both are, is there for download. You can have a copy of it. There's a document with it called "What is this that neither begins nor ends?" That will be also very helpful. These are all pointing out instructions for our practice and for our work in the world. Those two are also not two. I spoke briefly yesterday about how we're being instructed to practice clear awareness at all times, not just on the cushion. On the cushion is really important. We can experience there how slippery the mind is and how the thoughts arising in the mind may have been there for quite a while before you actually notice them. And what notices is clear awareness, and they're arising in clear awareness. And nonetheless, there's something moving in the mind. It is practice over and over again of recognizing the movements of mind. The mind is conditioned. The movements are the conditioning expressing. Mind without thoughts is mind simply in its essence of clarity, awareness. We don't change overnight, most of us. I mean, it does happen, but it's rare that somebody overnight wakes up with the mind that is stable in its insights into the direct insights into the nature of reality, and stable in vast, infinite, unconditional love. For most of us, there's a training process, and that's what we call mind taming. The mind taming is really a pointed way of saying how wild and untamed the conventional and conditioned mind is. And the taming is, I'm sure probably many of you have been around horses. And I've been a little tiny bit around horses. There has been, in our culture, in the United States, in American culture, it sort of has had a kind of love affair with fables of the Old West, which just happens to be where we are right now. We are in what in the movies is called the Out West. And the Wild Wild West, it has been called, and sometimes it still is definitely worthy of that name. But in the films, one often sees the process of taming a horse as what used to be called, and by some is still called, breaking the horse. A wild horse. Is that horse broken yet? Meaning, is it fit for a human being to control? And there are others who've never thought that way about training a horse and taming the wild horse. They've thought of it more as working with, befriending, and giving the horse the opportunities to learn how good it is and how easy it is to do that which has been made simple for it to do by a trainer, not a breaker. Let's tame our minds like that. Sometimes we need to be very sharp and very demanding. That can be a form of love. We're not trying to break our mind or even to break our habits. We're trying to show the deluded mind the pathways of truth to walk in. And as we show those, because there is nothing more powerful than truth, the mind is going to go into those pathways eventually, gradually, little by little perhaps. But right from the beginning, when we first start enunciating, as I spoke of earlier when I was talking about our prayers, when we first start enunciating to our own mind through prayer or injunction or beseeching or whatever form we're enunciating in, what we want the deluded mind to understand and how we want the deluded mind to follow in the understanding, we do that with clarity and compassion and understanding, and it may be strict. We may be being very strict with the mind. I sometimes am, and I certainly need to. I have a very wild mind. But there is a natural resonance of the deluded, within the deluded mind, there is a natural resonance to the sound of truth. Because the deluded mind and the awake mind are, in essence, same. Sawa, sawa, same. Clear awareness is their nature. Vast, unimpeded, all-pervading, radiant, effulgent with compassion and love. That is the nature of all being and of all phenomena. So mind caught in ignorance, mind caught in suffering, mind caught in delusion, when the note of truth is sounded, there is a natural leaning toward it. And then there may be massive resistance. I don't want to paint a rosy picture here. There may be massive resistance immediately after that. Don't take me from what I know. Oh, that's crazy. Who could ever love that much? That's crazy, saying something like that. What does she think we are? Saints? Yes, I do. Yes, I actually know that. Yes, I think that. I know that you, in your mind, as I, in my mind, I know that when we hear the sound of truth, we feel it on the pulse. Hong, hong, hong. We feel the sound of truth on the pulse, and we lean towards it. We lean into it. And again, we may pull back strongly. The habit is a very headstrong horse. But we are training the mind to find its natural way, which is to be in its true nature. So we're sweeping away the obstacles. So I remember at one point a friend who had horses was bringing a wild little Mustang into a new place. And Mustangs, they actually come from the Himalayas, the Mustangs. These little horses, often with a stripe down the back. They're very compact, very strong-minded, and just sweet. So this little Mustang did not want to get into the trailer. And why, who would blame it? It's a wild horse from the steppes. Why would it want to get into a trailer? So, of course, it wasn't fresh from the steppes. But I watched as she skillfully allowed the Mustang to move in the way it wanted to move. And as that happened, she would just a little bit at a time make the circle of movement a little smaller until instead of going like this around the round corral, they were going like this. And then it was like this. And then it was like this. And then it was, okay, here's the trailer. And so she got into the trailer. The Mustang was with her, and the Mustang pulled back a little, and she came with the Mustang as it pulled back. And then she stepped forward again with the Mustang. The Mustang stepped another step forward. It was really like a ballet. It was so beautiful to see. We can be like that, patient with our minds, at the same time insistent. Patience doesn't mean, okay, I give up for today. And you can have your way. It means this has been another step in our having the right way, the way to walk as bodhisattvas in the world. This has been another step. It looks like resistance, it looks like refusal, it looks like confusion and stubbornness and all of that. But we won't forget tomorrow what we accomplished today. Okay? So have confidence. Really, we need to have confidence in ourselves. We're starting from perfection. We're starting from already are where we want to be. That sentence got confused. The starting place is the perfection that we already are. Right? That's the starting place. We got confused about that. We're going to gradually clear away the confusion, and then we'll see it as it is. Please remember that. It's such a simple formulation of a profound fact of life in relative reality. I'm very moved to be able to speak together like this morning. These are the things that are really important for us as practitioners. Sometimes we forget why we're sitting in a temple. Sometimes we forget why we're doing something in the world. Sometimes we forget. So that's one of the reasons we have Sangha. Of course, it's the principal reason we have teachers and teachings too, and practice. But it's also one of the strong reasons we have Sangha, to remind us of what we've heard, what we've understood, and what we know. To remind us to have confidence and courage, and out of great generosity to continue trying, continue making the effort until we fall effortlessly into the effortless, But that's not done by brute force. That's done because suddenly the trailer looks like the universe wide open. And in terms of clear awareness practice, the actual application, as I spoke about yesterday, and as I am aware that some who were practicing in the evening were practicing with clear awareness method of mingling clear awareness with thought forms arising in the mind, this is a very skillful means. This is really such a subtle and penetrating wisdom of practice. Sometimes in practice, one has to be like an eagle, just like this, sitting and pouncing on a dangerous thought form, pouncing on a habituated mind pattern that wants to claim attention again, and obliterating it with awareness, with conscious awareness. Most often, our daily experience of our mind patterns isn't going to be extreme like that. Most often, there is the opportunity to be in the state of awareness, and in that state recognize immediately or down the road a bit the arising or the presence of a thought form that is just there, and we don't need it because actually the mind is like the sky. So we can allow that thought form to go on its own by not touching it, by simply not interacting at all and no engagement. Or if we want to, we can consciously bring that same process into the fore by mingling clear awareness and the thought form that's presently in the mind. And just naturally, effortlessly, the thought form dissolves. And I know that some of you have experienced this. And we have to do it over and over and over and over again because we don't experience it every time. Years ago, Rinpoche was giving a teaching in Prescott here in town. There wasn't a center here yet. This is really a long time ago. I can't even remember what decade it was. But there was no center here. There was nothing here. This was just a beautiful ridge. But he was giving a teaching in a little yoga center in Prescott, in the town of Prescott. And he said something that I've never forgotten him saying it. I'm still not sure I understand it. He said, "Your thought forms are sentient beings. If you love all sentient beings, then you will love your thought forms, and if you love your thought forms, liberate them. Every single one. I could get with liberate your thought forms. That was general enough that I could accomplish it in some lifetimes down the road. But maybe, but I couldn't comprehend even the words liberate every single thought form. Liberate every single arising in your mind. I could not comprehend that sentence could have any, I just couldn't get there. I had no idea how to think about that. But what it means is, very simply, what we do in practice. These are the instructions for how to liberate every single thought form. And remember I said yesterday, when Rinpoche was talking about clear awareness practice, he said, always and only look at clear awareness. Don't look at the thought form. Don't look at the problem. Always and only look at clear awareness. When you are only looking at clear awareness, thought form arises and self-liberates. Every thought form arising in the field of clear awareness instantly self-liberates. Self-liberates means vanishes, would be a word we might use, but settles into, relaxes into, dissolves into, returns to what it never left, its true nature, which is the same as the nature of clear awareness mind. So, as Machik Labdran said, and as I spoke of yesterday, when mind is looking at mind, thoughts vanish. That means when clear awareness is looking at clear awareness, thought form arising has no place to go except clear awareness and goes there. It is my intention to be this repetitious. This is not unintentional. I want to say over and over again the things I've already said yesterday and today. Choice. I want to touch on the word choice here for a moment. And also have in mind that the expression radical acceptance, just put that into your mind for a moment and let it sit there. And let it resonate while I speak of that, which doesn't sound like radical acceptance, but radical acceptance is a pathway to being wide awake. So I'm going to just touch on a couple things about choice. I spoke about willingness yesterday and how we have to be willing to withdraw our engagement from exteriorizing conditions of our mind so that they appear before us as our life circumstances, and then we see them as outside us, and it just increases the dualistic mind from which they arise in the first place. So willingness to cultivate the inward attention so that we actually see the mind in its conditioned nature and the operations of choice that occur in that mind. This is really critical to our practice and to our progress on the path and to our commitments as bodhisattvas. Every choice you do make is a choice that you don't make. Meaning, if you choose one step in this direction, you're choosing not to take a step in this direction. And this is the realm of responsibility that is incumbent upon us as citizens of the world, the duality dimension, to recognize that sometimes if this, then not that. And sometimes if not that opens up, then this. When we see these moments in the mind, when we're seeing the conditioned mind's movements and processes clearly enough that we recognize the choice points that arise for us, we are at choice in the matter of generating good karma or bad karma, positive karma which benefits us and others, or negative karma that is going to bring further suffering to us in the future. We may think we know how to do good acts and body, speech, and mind, but we also have habits that pull us away from those clear choices. So seeing the choice point is really critical, and many people, including myself, have the experience, because I've talked with many people about this because I wanted to hear what others were experiencing. Many of us have the experience of facing a field of potential choices. Perhaps it's a major life decision. Perhaps it's in an instant the question of what word do you speak? And many of us have an experience like this, where as we're contemplating which direction to go in, or what word to speak, or what relationship to enter, or the many kinds of choices we have to make, or we are able to make, we're aware that as we're kind of walking along the path with this field of choices around us, that there's a little something arising in the awareness, as if in the peripheral vision, red flag, or like a warning signal, or a kind of a tick that says, not this, not this, not this. But if our desire or our habituation are so strong that this that we're getting a signal about is something to which we're very attracted or very attached, it will be, we'll note that happened, but it will be as if it didn't. And we just go right for that thing that we were being given information about from our own mind was going to be detrimental. This has happened to me many times in my life. I'm now really aware when I feel that it's an actual visceral sensation that I get that's also registered in the mind, of course, as all sensation is, as if I'm actually being tapped on the mind, saying, not that. It doesn't necessarily always indicate that. I'm maybe still left in confusion about what to do, but there's a little less confusion about what not to do. Pay attention to the condition of your mind. Pay attention to your thoughts. Not all of them are informative. Many of them are habitual, but your mind is clear awareness. So it is ultimate wisdom. So you have the best of friends in this mind that we sometimes say is a monkey mind. It's also the friend, clear awareness itself, that we can rely upon for access to what is good. It is our access to what is good and true. And becoming willing to, and so to some degree practiced in, withdrawing the attention from the world of external phenomena and signals to be able to see the mind, see our own mind, the conditioned mind, allows us access to information in this way. It also is the same inward awareness, inward attention, the same clear awareness that's going to allow us to see the nature of our mind. We mostly, when we look within, we're seeing the conditioned mind, but what sees that is natural mind. What sees that is the clear, awake mind. And as we increasingly practice on a regular, ongoing basis in ordinary life circumstances, that inward attention, increasingly we will have information at our disposal in the conditioned reality, and wisdom, access to the natural wisdom that is never apart from us. We're never apart from that. The sounds of truth resonating in the mind. And a dimension of practice that relates to what I've just said is this very simple question that I have enunciated several times yesterday. When you're aware that you see a choice point, and you're aware that you see positive and negative potentials in the choice that you might make, and you have time at your disposal to, like perhaps a nanosecond, you can simply ask yourself, what sees that? At any point in your waking life or your sleeping life, whatever's arising, whatever you observe, whatever you're aware of, this question is your friend, your spiritual friend. You can ask yourself, what sees that? And then pause. Look within, that inward attention. Pay attention. And see the seer. See what sees your mind's activities. It only takes a second. And then you can rest in that nature that you've seen, that true nature that you've seen, or you can go about your business. Over and over again, practice what sees this. It's always fresh. It's always a fresh question. Lifelong, over and over, and minute by minute, creating and recreating the chains of delusion or stopping. What sees this stops us. Being still in the moment of possible choice. Choosing stillness, choosing seeing, choosing not to create something, but to see, to rest in, and to recognize what is just as it is, beyond creation and not creation. That is a moment of radical acceptance, just being with what is. The inner experience, the outer experience, just being with. I want to just invite us to take a quick break at this point. I have a little after 10:30, and then I want to come back and there's something that I want to speak with you about. And then after that, we'll practice some more before we break for lunch. But short means short. It's a bio break. Yeah? Some years ago, in a conversation with Garchen Rinpoche about some difficult circumstance that was being faced by a number of people, he spoke about fixation. And he was speaking to me, so I took it personally, which was a good thing under the circumstances. He was saying, essentially, whatever it is you perceive or think or object to or approve of or have in your mind about this event or this person or this situation, no fixation. Don't fixate. And I didn't exactly know what he meant by that term in that usage, but it resonated. It continued to occupy my mind, and he has continued to use that expression, which I'd never heard him use before, but he's used it a great deal since. And I want to address fixation this morning. I will try to be brief, but I might use more time than I actually intend because it's important, and I might use much less time than I actually intend, because it's also, I don't need to get fixated about fixation. I'm going to start by reading to you an excerpt from Brave, Generous, and Undefended, which is a book I published last year on the 37 Bodhisattva practices. And it's a verse it's a section that appears right at the beginning of the commentary on verse 11, which is really the key, the essence verse for the 37 practices. It goes, "All suffering without exception comes from seeking your own happiness. The perfect Buddhas are born from the altruistic mind. Therefore, truly exchange your own happiness for the suffering of others. This is the way of a Bodhisattva." And this teaching is really the heart of the Bodhisattva path. And I say that, in the first thing I say after, giving the verse, and then I want to read to you the next two paragraphs because it relates, and have the word fixation resonating in your mind a bit as you hear what I'm reading. "All suffering has but one cause, grasping to self in quotation marks. Each and every instance of self-grasping is a cause of suffering, and each and every experience of suffering arises from that single cause. To liberate ourselves from suffering, then, means to abandon our compulsive clinging to self." That's fixation. "Both the illusion of self's true existence and our ongoing subjective experience of selfness." And selfness means not just in us, but in everything. This gong, this piece of paper, the other people in the room. Selfness of a table, meaning the assumption of its having an absolute existence. With each degree of freedom from self-fixation comes a corresponding degree of amplitude in our inclination and capacity to notice, consider, and care about others, which wonderfully then further undercuts the self-seeking conviction and tendency. This is the relative experience of altruistic mind, gradually evolving and maturing. No self-fixation means also no other fixation. Construe, that means construct, no self, construe no self and no others, the only basis. Thus crumbles the only basis for the afflictive emotional reactions that lay down karmic causes of suffering for othering with its made-up fears and hatreds, and for the wars of minds, relationships, clans, and nations, because their root cause is no more. When we come to the point of tolerating the idea of the empty, open, clear, luminous nature of reality, and then eventually have direct experience of this, it is as if one blink of an eye opens to our view the entire universe of being. When duality collapses, the non-dual is revealed as infinite openness and clarity, spontaneously effulgent with compassionate love, selfless and otherless. In the non-dual, there is not even the name of self or other. This is the ultimate altruistic mind, birth chamber of the perfect Buddhas. That's pages 108 and 109. Simply put, then, there is no other. And the reason there's no other is there's no I. There never was an I. There never has been or will be an other. I, other, is the dualistic delusion. I, other, is the dualistic delusion. And it's not just about beings, it's also about appearances, generally. Verse 22. The way things appear is your own mind. Mind itself primordially transcends fabricated extremes. Knowing just this, do not create concepts of subject and object. This is the way of a bodhisattva. And although I'm always saying to myself and also to all of my spiritual friends, don't take anything personally, and then you will be free. Now and right here today, I'm saying take this personally. What I've just read, that verse 22 and that brief section of commentary on verse 11, take it personally. Look directly at it, the meaning of those two verses, particularly verse 22. Look at it, this concept that describes, points to dualistic delusion, the I-other paradigm that we have imposed upon experiences of reality and continue to do so. Look at it directly in your own mind, in terms of your body and speech also, and see it clearly, because you're looking at it with clear awareness and with the motivation of a bodhisattva to see what fixation looks like, and how it arises and how it's perpetuated in your own experience. It's not enough to have concepts about this. This we really need to grapple with in a very direct way in examining our own mind, examining our speech and other forms of behavior. Because this is the root of fixation. This dualistic delusion of I and other is the root of fixation, and fixation is the end. Wherever fixation is, it's the end of seeking. It's the end of inquiring. It's the end of learning. And it's a tremendous obstacle to loving, because it's also the end of acceptance. If you're fixated on something, you accept nothing else, essentially, in a given realm of conversation or activity. Your fixation is your bulwark, it's like you've built a castle of your own making, of your ideas or your sense of identity or your sense of what's right and wrong, and you've built a castle and you've pulled yourself into the castle and you've pulled up the drawbridge so nobody can come across the moat. And because of that, when we see fixation, which can also be described as fixity, meaning stasis, meaning a fixed attachment to things being the way you think they are, and to your conceptualization of reality being the way to see things, and your idea of what's right and wrong being the way to think about it, and your use of certain kind of language being the only way that one should speak about things, and there's no other way to speak about them. This is fixity, meaning you're stuck. You're completely stuck. As soon as there's fixation, you're immovable. If you're stuck and immovable, you have only one motive force, and that's your fixation, is your only motive force. So you don't even have a motive force to get beyond the fixation because you're so convinced that that's the nature of reality. I'm using you, really, I. I mean, this is coming from close observation of the inner landscape, too. Not just observation of the external world, because I really do practice what is taught in verse 22, to take all appearances as reflections of one's own mind. And that's exactly what I've quoted to you several times. That is the teaching of Guru Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche, for all practice in the bardos of existence and also post-existence. Post-life, I mean, not post-existence. Take all appearances as reflections of your own mind. If you do that, you're not fixated. If you do that, you're open, you're inquiring, you're available to life. You're available to love. With fixation, the doors are shut tight. Love becomes attachment. Fear becomes hatred. And uncertainty becomes panic, really. A person who has a tendency to fixation and is favoring that tendency will panic in the face of uncertainty in order to reestablish some kind of fixation that gives a sense, illusory, but a sense of security and stability. We're creatures that want continuity and predictability, and we'll put ourselves in cages in order to have stability and continuity and predictability. Cages of the mind. Now, Rinpoche was literally in a prison for 20 years. That was the place that he freed his mind. And the teachings that were very instrumental in that were the teachings on clear awareness, as I mentioned yesterday. And here we are in the very place where this great being has chosen to remain for the last part of his life, and is making available to us the most profound and most subtle and most vast teachings, the teachings on the union of relative and absolute, the teachings on the union of Mahamudra and Dzogchen, the teachings on the union of clear awareness and confusion even, that there is clear awareness is the true nature, and therefore there is nothing that is apart from it, and therefore appearances of fixation in an instant can be dissolved. But how do we get to the place where we're looking for that instant? Sometimes it staggers us, it just hits us between the eyes. Sometimes we're made uncomfortably aware of our discomfort. And sometimes we have to ride that wild horse of fixation, which is really self-grasping in an extreme form. Sometimes we just have to ride that horse until it gets really tired and stops. and then we can get off the horse. Sometimes we're thrown by that horse. I was, literally, physically, in a state of fixation. Yeah, I recognize now in retrospect, I was in a condition of fixation in some way in relation to something, and I was riding a horse and I got tossed onto my head. I was brain injured, a traumatic brain injury, which actually was very beneficial. I'm a much nicer person, easier to get along with since I got my brain injury, but it has brought with it certain limitations. It's okay, I'm fine. But I'm not exactly as I was before my brain got, before I landed head first on the ground, the rocky ground of Arizona. So there can be many different ways that fixity and fixation can come to a place where there's an interruption to your death grip on your fixation is either torn loose or you get exhausted. I mean, there can be many ways to speak of it, and it's not always predictable. But fixation is the way we experience, experientially in the realm of feeling and thinking and observing and deciphering and so on. In the experiential realm, fixating is the way we act out the dualistic delusion. And fixating is just another way of speaking of self-grasping. Because again, as I said yesterday, self-grasping doesn't mean, oh, she's selfish. Selfishness arises from self-grasping, no question. But self-grasping is the original error of perception and imputation that comes with consciousness arising in a sentient being. The original error. Experiencing existing, attributing I. It's experiencing self-existence. That in itself is value-free. It's not a problem. But what happens instantly with that, almost co-emergently, is other. If there's I, there's other. And as it says in the prayer of Kuntu Zangpo, innate unawareness, which is that imputation of I, is already an awareness. It means it's experience, but it's not experience illumined by awareness. Innate unawareness means unmindfulness and distraction. And here's the key phrase that I want us to pay attention to. Imputing, which means attributing to. Imputing unawareness means dualistic thoughts towards self and others. So, imputing otherness is what that points to, yes? Both kinds of unawareness, meaning ignorance, unawareness meaning ignorance, are the basis for the delusions of all beings. Dualistic thoughts create doubt. From subtle attachment to this dualistic turn of mind, dualistic tendencies become stronger and thicker. This is hello world. Yeah? Hello world. This is what we're seeing and experiencing in our world as we're living it right now. The appearances that are our world are a reflection of extremes of dualistic mind. And this has probably always been true, but in this moment in our world, the condition of the world is one of great suffering. The suffering of confusion, which is the suffering of ignorance. Confusion, not knowing what is true and what is not true. Not even knowing what's real and what's not real. Not knowing whether one's dear ones are going to die tomorrow or the next day or today. That's always been the case. One never does know, but now we know that we don't know. I mean, through the pandemic, we have been brought up short against the absolute, the absolute nature of relativity. That's a ridiculous statement. But the absolute truth of not being able to know in relative reality really anything. So we make up. We make it up. We unspool the thread of relative reality. We do that. We create the suffering. We create the confusion. And to others we impute ill motive. You know, when we were experiencing harm, we want to blame somebody or something for that. Well, responsibility and blame aren't the same thing. Blame has a lot of opprobrium in it. It's like throwing mud at somebody. Blame, blame, blame. To acknowledge that somebody's responsible, that I'm responsible for something, it can be done without blame. It can be done with love. Oh, I was so ignorant in that time that I just didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing with my words. I didn't know what I was doing with my speech. I didn't know what I was doing with my activities. And I most of all didn't know what I was doing with my mind in that period. I'm speaking just in a general way of any given period where things were really out of kilter for me. And I'm sure that this is true for all of us, that we could look at periods in our lives. I mean, it could have been yesterday. It might be right this minute, where we're really aware of our own ignorance. But our ignorance that we're not aware of is how we are caught in fixation, because we are elaborating. The three poisons, attachment, aversion, and ignorance. The attachment one we know about, it's I want it. The aversion one is I don't want it. The ignorance one is panic. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's good and bad. I don't know if I want it or don't want it. I don't know. I don't know. That's very frightening for human beings. As I said earlier, we really desire continuity and predictability. So we create it in our minds. So we grab a theory, we grab a belief system, we grab a code of behavior or dress or speech. We join a clan, we join a political movement, we join a religion, we join a family, we're looking for stability, continuity, predictability. We go through our lives looking for small containers to be in. You know, make them small enough that we can feel secure. We create those for ourselves. In our minds, the way we think, in our way that we handle our emotions, in the way that we live in the world, in the way we interpret the world. You know, I'm for this, I'm against that. There it is, the dualistic illusion. You can be for this without being against that, and you can think that's unwise and not a course of action you want to take without being against it, which implies and leads to being against those who espouse it. And there's the elaboration, yes? From simply having this choice that you're choosing, you cannot accept the existence of the other choice. This is pictured in our world so vividly at this time. We need to see this operation in our own minds, because this is not foreign to us. This is happening for us all. Sometimes it's extremely gross, and you will trip over it and fall on your face and say, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that. Thank heavens I fell and woke up. Or it can be so subtle that it might take you another 40 years to figure it out. Let's go for the tripping and falling if we have to, but there's other options as well. We have the great good fortune of having stumbled upon or having sought out and having been shown, willy-nilly perhaps, or having been just gifted spontaneously with an unmistaken path. And But even on the unmistaken path, one can make mistakes. For example, one can be a proponent of compassion and have hatred for those who don't have compassion. Hello? I've known quite a number of people in this lifetime who are very devoted to the task of rescuing those, whether they're animals or humans or plants, or parts of the earth that are in danger of harm. And naturally, one wants to praise that motive. That is a praiseworthy motive. It's so beneficial to have people who choose to give their lives to prevent harm to others, whether we call them sentient beings or natural environments, which are always, of course, filled with sentient beings. And even in the Buddha Dharma traditions, there's controversy about whether certain things are sentient beings or not. We don't even have to go there. We can just say all beings, right? But I lost my train of thought. Just give me a second. That's the head injury thing kicking in here. Hold on. Anybody remember what were the last things I was saying before I... Oh yes, so here are these wonderful beings that are engaging in praiseworthy activity. But at one point, a whole group of them came to me and said, or one person who was working with a group of people who were engaged in this praiseworthy activity to benefit many, came to me and said, in our community where we're doing this work together, a lot of us are aware that we really hate the people that whose harms we're trying to rectify. And I thought, bingo, I'm there, So we spent a lot of time talking about that in that community and with others, This is not uncommon. Just look what happens in political factions, This is not an uncommon thing that human beings do with their minds. You're causing harm, and I'm going to rectify the harm if I can, but I hate you for the harm that you're causing, that I think you're causing. Of course, you think I'm causing harm, and you hate me for the harm you think I'm causing, and you're trying to rectify that. So here we are. So as soon as you have, really, to reduce this to the absolute bare elements, that basis that Kuntu Zampo teaches is the source of all suffering and delusion. That dichotomy, that dualism, that basis for all confusion and suffering, that operation is one that we're making in our minds and therefore in our speech and our actions all day, every day. Because we live in duality mind, and we therefore live in a world that outpictures the mind of duality. So the simple little event of sitting down for a moment and being still and allowing the duality function to slow down for a minute and apply a practice in which you are inviting clear awareness to recognize clear awareness. This is the practice of non-duality. And this is this practice that we could say is so simple. We're just sitting, we're observing the mind. We note a thought form, we mingle it with clear awareness, and we say, what sees this? Oh, the answer is clear awareness sees it. What's it seeing? Oh, the thought form just dissolved into clear awareness. Oh, seeing clear awareness disguised as a thought form or arising as the play, the natural play of mind. This is the medicine for the suffering world, for the world of confusion and delusion. This is the medicine. So this is why I was speaking about the Bodhisattva life path. The duality delusion is the disease, and we all have it. To deny that you have it would only be true if you were someone like Garchen Rinpoche. And I don't know if he would even deny that he had it, although I'm sure he would say he doesn't have it at times. I don't know if he, at any moment, has an instant where he is thinking dualistically. I would say of myself, I don't even know if I have a single moment where I'm not. Therein lies the challenge, and therein lies the opportunity. Therein lies the path of the Bodhisattva. I did pretty well on time. It's only 11:17. Did you get it? Did you all get it? Yeah? Got it? Got it? We need this. We need this medicine. Please take this medicine and take it personally. We need this. Some people, when they think about some meditation teachers and some meditators whom I know and who'd like to share practice with others, have said that they want the mind to be very undisturbed before entering a meditation session. And so I had some questions about whether to talk about this before the next part of our session, which is to practice. But then I remembered a teacher of mine. Actually, I can't even remember which teacher it was, but it's a teaching that I've resonated to and I follow as a practitioner and as a teacher. I want the whole mess to be available. Like I want my guru, when I go in to sit in my little cave, I want my guru to see the whole mess in all of its messiness. I want the worst to be on display. Because how then? If not, how will I be rescued? Do you understand what I'm saying? And I want, when I'm sitting like this with my spiritual friends, I want all your doubts and confusion up. I want them all stirred up. Because I want you, when you sit, to be genuinely fully there in all that is needing to have clear awareness illuminate for you. So I want all your doubts. I will eat them for breakfast. Right? I want all, it's the same way I want all mine. I want them all displayed. And I don't want to display on the street corner, but when I'm in my practice, I don't want anything covered up. I want to be naked. So I wanted to talk about this with you today, because this is tearing our societies apart, what I'm describing to you. You know what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter what side of the spectrum you find yourself on, you know that I'm describing what's happening and what's tearing apart families, what's tearing apart, villages, what's surfacing in competition for vaccines in different, the lower income countries are begging the United States, for example, to relax an embargo so that they can get the raw materials needed to make their own vaccine, because we're not giving them the vaccines. And I'm not hating anybody who's doing any part of this. Hold this all with love, but that's an example. It's like we're up against each other rather than cooperative. On the other hand, in these dire circumstances of the current era that we're in our earth life, we are seeing levels of cooperation and collaboration and co-creativity that I'm sure some of us despaired of ever being able to see. And we're seeing freedoms for people who've been denied freedoms, and we're seeing recognition of beings, as as brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers and cousins and uncles and aunts in different species. We're recognizing relationship at levels that we have not been conscious of before. And we're recognizing, that we live many lifetimes, and that the patterns that we're trying to work with in our lives and with one another are long-standing, habituated patterns, and for them we must have great compassion, and we must have great love, and for ourselves as well. And that's not self-grasping. That's recognizing I and all these others, one mind. Rinpoche says to us all the time, your mind, my mind, same, one mind, And I think I mentioned yesterday, and if I didn't, I'm glad to mention today, that he said in a teaching quite recently, at the very beginning of a teaching, one of his online teachings, Dharma is 24/7 on on the airwaves since the pandemic locked us down. It's like with your mental tuner, just go like this. Here comes Dharma. It's fabulous, and other religious traditions doing the same thing. So Rinpoche, at the very beginning of one of his teachings online, quite recently in the last few weeks, said, "It may seem to you that we're communicating through electronic means because we're not present together." And he said, but it's not true. The electronic means are very beneficial, but we are present together. The absence is an appearance. Presence is the reality. Our minds are one. There are many consciousnesses, many different individuals. There's one mind. And we all are that. So the camera is our friend in this situation. Such a friend, direct sense of connection energetically. But we also know, some of us have been practicing mind to mind. We also know that that connection's there without the camera. Not even the camera is needed, ultimately. We are literally one mind. There never were two to begin with. So. But in terms of consciousness, that's the individual's responsibility. So, let's practice. Thank you so much for your patience. I realize it was a little intense. That's a good thing in my book, even if I'm weeping. Intensity, it's good, it's a burning fire. Let it burn away ignorance. Been nice if I turned off the microphone before I did that, but I didn't think of it. Oh well. You were all thinking it, weren't you? No, you weren't thinking it? Thank you for your kindness. Okay, so all of this that we've just touched, it's all stirred up now, perfect. As we sit, and I'll gong to bring us in, and then twice to bring us out again, as always. As we sit, remember to gather yourself within, draw yourself fully within the innermost center of your being. You can recognize that as the central channel, the wisdom channel, or simply feel it experientially as the center of your being, without identifying it any further than that. And then sense the upward and downward flow of the vertical dimension of your being, which is the awareness dimension. Wisdom. And then remember that vertical dimension of truth, rising, descending, meets at the heart center with the horizontal dimension of Bodhisattva in the world. And out along the horizontal limbs flow love and compassion, fully imbued with the wisdom of the heart, and the heart fully imbuing with the vertical dimension, the love and compassion. And then breathing just very easily with that very clear, it doesn't even have to be a visualization, it's just a sensing, an energetic sensing of what is real for you in that moment and what I've just spoken to. And you may experience it very differently than the way I'm describing it, that's fine. But this is the way in which we initiate the drawing within, that is the inward attention. So now when you bring your arms down again and your hands are at rest, and they can rest on thighs, just like, as if you were sitting in a chair, or they can rest open in your lap. We don't want them fingers crossed, that's all. And then the spine is very easy, very relaxed and easy, just like the stem of a flower, and the head is free to move freely like the flower on the stem. And now draw within the gaze. Yes, just exactly like that. And if you need a support, there's this gesture. Just turn the attention within to see mind itself. Just like that. And now we sit. What we have drawn within is recognition, is to recognize clear awareness. That's what sees the mind. So the inward attention is seeing conditioned mind. It also has the potential to recognize that it is also simultaneously seeing mind as it is. Natural mind, the ground of awareness. So when you're not seeing the natural state, it's that you don't think you're seeing the natural state. There is nothing other than the true nature of mind. There is nothing other than that. What is only missing temporarily is our recognition of that we are seeing it. Not necessarily just our recognition of the natural state, but our recognizing that we are seeing that. So then the question, what sees that? At any point as you're sitting, ask that question. And it's a sharpening, a refining of the inward attention that allows you to recognize what it is that's always there, always already present, always already available to your perception and your experience and your recognition. So, eyes open, please. Let's dedicate the merit of our listening, hearing, listening, contemplating, and practicing. Sunam di tam chansi pani tonene pedanam pamchete jigana chimbalon tripai si pezzo dentro. By this merit may I attain omniscience, may it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara. I vow to liberate all beings. Thank you so much. My mind out there, my mind in here, my mind in here is happy. Clear awareness is our friend. For any sorrow or distress or grief, apply over and over and over again the balm of clear awareness, the medicine of most pure mind. See you at 2:00.